Our next topic is radical expressions with variables, but multiplying them. So this is our third little kind of topic within this. So we started off with taking numbers, breaking them down into two numbers that can be multiplied and squared, and then we added letters to it, and now we're going to multiply those together. Okay. So the very first thing we should remember, and it's a very important concept, is that if you have the same number or letter underneath radicals and you multiply by itself, it basically cancels out the radical. So once again, for example, if you have the square root of x times the square root of x, it just equals x. Okay. Same thing if you have a number. Let's say the square root of 4 times the square root of 4 just equals 4, right? The square root of 7 times the square root of 7 equals 7. Okay, you get the idea. Square root of 10 times the square root of 10 equals 10. Okay, so remember this thing. If you have two numbers that multiply to each other that both have a radical, it's that same number without the radical. Okay, so it's a very important concept to remember here. Okay, as we move forward. So let's start off with an example. The square root of 5 times the square root of 10. Okay, so there's a few ways you can do this. As we know previously, you could multiply these two numbers together to get 50 and then break it down that way, or you could break it down right now. So we know 5, you can't break down 5 any more than it is already, right? The square root of 5 is the square root of 5, okay? You can't break it down to anything else. But 10, we can, right? Now in this case, we're not looking for a perfect square, okay? We only want two numbers that multiply to 10, okay? And we know that 5 and 2, when multiplied, get you 10, okay? So once again, we're not looking for a perfect square in this case. We just want two numbers that multiply to our number here, which is 10. So 5 and 2 multiply to get 10. Now remember, we're multiplying this, so that means this times this times this, right? That's what we're doing in this case, okay? Now, remember what I just showed you. If you have the same number, you multiply it, and they both have a radical, that radical gets canceled out. So look right here. You have a square root of 5 times the square root of 5. So we know right there that square root symbol gets canceled out. And what do you have left? The square root of 2 comes down by itself. Okay? I know. Once again. Square root of 5, can't change it, can't do anything with it, bring it down. Okay? Square root of 10, we found two numbers that multiply to 10, 5 and 2, with the square root symbol. We know because we're multiplying these two, it just means everything within gets multiplied together. So this times this all equals this, right? And we know that we have the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, those square root symbols cancel out. Okay, to give us 5. The 2 with the square root under here stays underneath it here, and that's going to be our final answer. Okay? Alright, moving on. The square root of 12x times the square root of 3x. Okay? So, once again, let's break this down into numbers and letters. Okay? So, let's start over here. Numbers, 12 and x. Okay? Now we know, remember, this is being multiplied. Our number is 12. Remember, we're not looking for a perfect square. We only want two numbers that, when multiplied, gives us 12. Now, in this case, you can break down 12 into numbers into a perfect square. We can use 4 and 3, right? 4 times 3 is 12. We know the square root of 4 is 2, right? Our 3 is done. Bring that down here, okay? Our square root of x, can't do anything with it. We're going to bring it down here to make things a little more easy to read, and I'll show you why in a second, okay? Now let's move over to this side. Numbers, square square root of 3, letters, square root of x. Now in this case, you can't do anything more, right? It's just 3 and x. You can't break those down any more. So we're going to go ahead and bring them down to our bottom here with the rest of our case here. Now we know all of this is multiplied together, okay? So now let's go through and see what we got. So we have a 2 on the outside, right? We have a square root of 3, square root of x, square root of 3, square root of x. So look, these two things are the same here, right? So once again, we know, and I'm just going to write this up here to kind of show you. To kind of remind you, okay? Same numbers or letters with square roots equal that number without one, okay? So right here we have, look, square root of 3, square root of 3. So we know that cancels out to just 3. And we know we have x and x, right? Square root of x, square root of x. So we know that does cancel out to just x. Now, our 2 is still up here. I'm going to bring this down. So 2, remember everything gets multiplied together. So 2 times 3 times x. Multiply your numbers. 2 times 3 is 6. X is by itself. So it stays just like that. Okay? So, a lot there, right? Looks complicated, it's a lot going on. Remember, don't get overwhelmed with this stuff, okay? Break it down into things that we can do. Break it down, smaller pieces. Chunk it up, okay? Start with this side. Recap, right? Start with this side. Break it down. Numbers, letters. With numbers, we know we can break down 12 to 4 and 3 because those multiply to get 12. We know square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 3 is nothing. Well, it's square root of 3. It doesn't break down. Our x square root, can't do anything with it. Bring it down to our rest of it here, okay? This side, break it down. Numbers, letters. Numbers, letters. You can't do anything with either one. They're already broken down. We brought them down to our bottom here, okay? Now, everything that's multiplied together, we know that if you have a number or a letter that's the same, multiplied together with a square root symbol, equals that same thing, okay, without one. So we have square root of 3 times square root of 3 gets us 3. Square root of x times square root of x gets us x. Our 2 is still out front. We bring it down. Everything that's multiplied together. Final answer, x squared. Okay. Let's do one more. Let's do 2 x to the 9th square root times 26 x to the 6th square root. Okay? Alright, a lot going on here. Break it down. Start with the left side. Numbers and letters, right? Breaking it down. Square root of 2, square root of x9. Okay? Square root of 2, can't do anything with it, right? It's just by itself. So we're going to leave it. The square root of 9 now, or square root of x to the 9th, right? We can break down. Remember, if it's an odd numbered variable, you break it down. Take one away from 9 to make 8. Do the other one by itself. And remember, once you have this, take our 8. That doesn't look good. Okay. Now once you have your 8, it's even. Now we can divide this number by 2 to get x to the 4th with no radical. Our x square root stays the way it is. Our 2 over here, we're going to bring this down here just to kind of keep it consistent. Okay, so now this side is done. That couldn't do anything with that. Broke x to the 9th down to x8 and x. Divide this by 2 to get 4 without radical. This one stays with it underneath it here. Okay. Okay. This side is done. This side. Break it down. Numbers. Letters. Okay. 26. Two numbers to multiply To get 26, your options are 2, square root of 2, and the square root of 13. Can't do anything more with that. Okay, you can't break either of those numbers down. We'll leave them the way it is. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring those down here. X to the 6, look at our variable, it's even, which means we can take our 6, divide it by 2, to get x to the 3rd, and then we're going to bring that down, x to the 3rd. Okay? Now, everything has been broken down as much as we can. Now it's time to put it all together. Okay? So we know, let's look for numbers or letters that have the same thing under radicals. We have it right here with our square roots of 2, right? Remember, we multiply those together, it stays as that number. So square root of 2 times the square root of 2 gets us 2. Okay? Now look at our, we have x to the 4th and x to the 3rd outside with no square root symbol, right? So we have those, we have these, and then what's left underneath the square root? We have x and 13 underneath the square root symbol. So underneath the square root symbol, we have 13 and we have x, right? Now one last thing. We have our x's on the outside here. Okay, we can go ahead and multiply these. Remember, when you multiply variables that have the same base, you add the exponents. So the 2 stays out front, and we're going to do x to the 4th times x to the 3rd. Remember, add the exponents to give us x to the 7th, and then our radical 13x. So our final answer, 2x to the 7th times the square root of 13x. That's our final answer. Okay, so it looks like a lot. It's a lot. I'm sure if you're looking at it right now without context, you're just like, this is mumbo jumbo. But you got to break it down. Follow me slowly as we do this. Okay, break this down. Numbers and letters. Okay, break it down as much as you can. All right. Remember this concept here. Anything that has the same, if it's the same base, underneath radicals, multiply together, takes away the radical. Okay. So that's how we do this. Don't get freaked out by it. We'll be okay.